Sean Connery was James Bond, but his real life was complicated. To millions, he was a smooth, fearless spy who defined an era of cinema. Yet behind the charm and the tuxedo, there was a man with a story full of struggles, conflicts, and surprises that few ever saw. This isn't just a tale of a legendary actor. It's the story of a complicated life behind the legend. Sean Connery. The name itself conjures up images of the suave, unflappable James Bond, define what it meant to be a spy on screen. With his piercing gaze, effortless charm, and that unmistakable Scottish brogue, Connery wasn't just an actor playing a role. He became the very embodiment of cool for an entire generation. For decades, fans have revered him as a quintessential Bond, the hero who could handle any danger with a quick quip and a steady hand. But what if everything we thought we knew about Sean Connery was only part of the picture? Behind the gleaming tuxedo and the gun barrel sequence lies a story that isn't as heroic or straightforward as the characters he played. Connery's real life was filled with contradictions, struggles, and controversies that rarely made the headlines but reveal a more complicated man. He wasn't just a polished star lighting up the silver screen. He was someone who faced deep personal battles, professional conflicts, and dark rumors that many find hard to reconcile with the iconic hero image. This isn't just a tale of Hollywood glamour. It's a story of ambition, conflict, and human complexity that unfolded far away from the camera's spotlight. Some of what you'll hear may surprise you, even shock you. From behind-the-scenes tensions on Bond sets to whispers about his personal life, Sean Connery's legacy has layers that go beyond the sleek, action-packed roles. It's a journey to the highs and lows of a man who lived under the weight of immense fame, and sometimes struggled under the pressure. And what's especially intriguing is how Connery navigated the fine line between being admired and being misunderstood. He was praised for his undeniable talent and magnetic presence, but there were moments when his reputation faced serious challenges. The heroic figure fans adored often clashed with the reality of a man who wasn't always easy to get along with, and whose personal life wasn't without controversy. As we peel back the layers, you'll see how Connery's story reflects something deeper about the nature of fame itself. How public figures are often seen only through the roles they play, while their real lives remain a puzzle filled with shades of gray. The same man who defeated villains and saved the day on screen sometimes struggled with his own battles off-screen. So, if you think Sean Connery was just the perfect James Bond, think again. The real story is far from simple, and it reveals a man whose life was as complex and gripping as any thriller he starred in. Stick around, because what comes next will change the way you see the legend of 007 forever. Sean Connery's journey to becoming the iconic James Bond wasn't a story of overnight success or Hollywood privilege. Born Thomas Sean Connery in Edinburgh, Scotland in 1930, his early life was anything but glamorous. Raised in a working-class neighborhood, Connery's childhood was shaped by hard work, modest means, and a rough-and-tumble environment that toughened him up early on. His father was a truck driver and his mother a cleaning woman, neither with ties to the entertainment world. Growing up, Connery was known for his physical strength more than his words. He boxed and lifted weights, carving a solid physique that would later become his trademark. Yet, beneath that tough exterior was a young man who was shy, self-conscious, and unsure of his future. He worked a string of odd jobs, from a milkman to a coffin polisher, before serving in the Royal Navy, which only lasted short while due to a medical discharge. During these years, Connery didn't exactly seem destined for stardom. His introduction to acting came somewhat by accident. Connery initially pursued bodybuilding and modeling, entering beauty contests that showcased his striking looks and muscular frame. It was through this route that he began landing small roles in Scottish theater and eventually made his way to London. But early on, his thick Scottish accent and working-class background made it tough for casting directors to see him as a leading man. The breakthrough arrived in the late 1950s when Connery landed roles in British TV series and films, steadily building his resume. However, most of these parts were minor or typecast him as the rugged Scotsman or tough guy. No one could have predicted that he would soon be the face of the world's most famous secret agent. In 1962, everything changed with the casting of the very first official James Bond movie, Dr. No. The producers were looking for someone who could bring a fresh yet commanding presence to the role, someone who could balance charm, toughness, and a hint of danger. Connery was the underdog, an unknown actor competing with established stars, and many were skeptical of his ability to pull off the suave spy persona. But when Connery appeared on screen, something clicked. His natural charisma, combined with raw masculinity and effortless cool, redefined the spy genre. Bond was no longer just a character in a book. He became a cinematic legend, and Connery was the man who created that legacy. His portrayal was iconic, cocky but likable, ruthless but playful, and audiences around the world couldn't get enough. Yet, even as Connery became a global superstar, the man behind the role was still navigating complexities of sudden fame and the expectations that came with it. His rise wasn't just a triumph of talent, but also a struggle to prove himself worthy, to break free from the limitations of his background, and to handle the pressures of being a new kind of hero. This rise from humble beginnings to international stardom set the stage for everything that came next. But as you'll see, the story of Sean Connery's Bond years is far from perfect, and the challenges he faced behind the scenes would change the course of his career in ways few expected. Sean Connery's time as James Bond wasn't just a career milestone. It was a cultural revolution. When Dr. No hit theaters in 1962, the world met a new kind of hero, confident, slick, and lethal, but with a grin that suggested he was having fun. Connery's Bond was a blueprint for every spy thriller that followed, and the films became instant blockbusters. But behind the tuxedo and martini glasses, the story was far more complicated. Connery made 7 Bond films, including classics like Goldfinger and From Russia with Love. He brought a magnetic energy to the role that few could match, blending danger with charm in a way that felt effortless. Audiences were hooked, and the character's catchphrases and style became iconic overnight. Yet, even as he was defining Bond, Connery was locked in a complicated dance with the franchise and its creators. Behind the scenes, tension simmered. Connery wasn't always thrilled with the scripts or the direction of the series, and his relationship with producers could be rocky. Despite his success, he felt undervalued and underpaid, especially given how much money the Bond movies made. By the mid-1960s, rumors swirled that Connery wanted out, tired of being typecast and craving roles that challenge him in new ways. But leaving Bond wasn't as simple as walking away. The studio leaned heavily on Connery's image to sell tickets, and the public was obsessed with their Bond. When he first left after You Only Live Twice, it sparked speculation about his future. Would he ever escape the shadow of 007? Even more revealing were the personal struggles that accompanied his stardom. Connery reportedly had clashes with some of his co-stars and directors, moments where his reportedly stubborn personality and strong opinions created friction on set. These stories weren't always public, but leaked out over time, painting a picture of a man who was both fiercely protective of his craft and sometimes difficult to work with. What's striking is how Connery's tough guy persona on screen contrasted with the complexities behind the camera. His Bond was a smooth operator, but Connery himself was battling creative frustrations and the challenges of rapid fame. He wasn't just playing a character. He was fighting to maintain control over his own career. And yet, even with the difficulties, Connery's Bond films left a legacy that's hard to overstate. His interpretation shaped the way spies were portrayed for decades, influencing actors who followed and embedding James Bond deep into global pop culture. Fans still debate whether anyone else could ever top Connery's mix of charm, danger, and wit. But the story doesn't end with his last official Bond film. What happened next would reveal even more about Connery's struggles to break free from the role that made him famous, and the personal challenges he faced along the way. The golden era of Bond was just the beginning of a story filled with surprises, conflicts, and a fight to reclaim his own identity. Sean Connery's rise to fame as James Bond gave him global recognition, but behind the scenes, his journey was far from smooth. The charming, confident figure audiences adored often masked a man wrestling with personal demons and professional conflicts that complicated his path. What many fans don't know is that Connery's off-screen life was peppered with tensions that shaped not only his career, but the man himself. One of the most persistent rumors that followed Connery involved his clashes with directors and co-stars. His strong personality could sometimes be seen as stubbornness or even arrogance, especially on set. Several reports from the Bond film suggest that Connery wasn't shy about voicing his opinions, even if they went against the producers or fellow actors. This occasionally caused friction, and while some admired his conviction, others found him difficult. But beneath this tough exterior was a man fiercely protective of his craft, unwilling to settle for anything less than what he believed was right. Connery's personal life also had its share of struggles. The relentless spotlight wasn't easy to handle. Fame brought pressure and scrutiny, and Connery often found himself battling issues that rarely made it into tabloids at the time. Rumors about strained relationships, intense mood swings, and private hardships painted a picture of a man who wasn't always in control of his public image or private emotions. Perhaps one of the most delicate areas concerns whispers of darker moments that shaped Connery's life away from the camera. While nothing was ever confirmed outright, sources hinted at periods where he faced serious emotional lows. These weren't public breakdowns, but moments that those close to him described as deeply challenging. In an era when actors kept personal struggles hidden, Connery's battles remained largely a secret, fueling speculation and mystery. At the same time, Connery's relationship with the Bond franchise itself was a constant source of tension. Despite his iconic status, he often felt trapped by the role. The public's insatiable appetite for Bond meant Connery was typecast in a way that frustrated his desire for diverse roles. He wanted to prove he was more than just a spy, a serious actor capable of complex, dramatic parts. But the shadow of 007 loomed large, making it hard to escape. Adding to the complexity was Connery's reported dissatisfaction with how women were portrayed in the Bond films. Later in his career, he expressed regret about the Bond girl image and the sometimes problematic treatment of female characters. This awareness showed a side of Connery that was reflective and willing to critique even his most famous work. These hidden conflicts, personal and professional, reveal a side of Sean Connery that contrasts sharply with the effortless hero of the screen. The man behind Bond was battling his own wars, trying to balance fame with privacy, artistic integrity with commercial success, and public adoration with private doubts. What happened after he left Bond would push these struggles into sharper focus, testing Connery in ways few could have imagined. The next chapter would show how these conflicts shaped his attempts to redefine himself and how his personal life continued to cast a long shadow over his career. Leaving James Bond behind was supposed to be Sean Connery's moment of freedom, a chance to prove he was more than just the world's most famous spy. But escaping the shadow of 007 turned out to be a far tougher mission than anyone expected. After stepping away from the Bond franchise, Connery faced a complicated path filled with highs and lows that tested his resilience and reshaped his legacy. At first, it seemed like Connery was headed for a new chapter. He took on roles that challenged his range and showed off his dramatic talents. From playing King Arthur in Camelot to the tough cop in The Untouchables, which eventually earned him an Academy Award. These parts were a far cry from the tuxedo and shaken not stirred persona, and many saw this as Connery's chance to break free and be taken seriously as a versatile actor. Yet, the transition wasn't seamless. While some roles won him critical acclaim, others exposed the difficulties Connery faced in shedding his Bond image. The public and critics sometimes struggled to separate the actor from his legendary spy persona, which many had to work twice as hard to prove his depth. Some of his films during this period received mixed reviews, and a few flops reminded everyone how fickle Hollywood could be. Connery's personality, which had occasionally caused tension during his Bond days, also made reinvention tricky. Known for his confidence and sometimes stubbornness, he didn't shy away from voicing his opinions on set, which sometimes rubbed people the wrong way. Despite this, his undeniable talent and screen presence kept him in demand, and he continued to pick roles that interested him, even if they were unconventional. During this time, rumors circulated about Connery's personal life affecting his career choices. Some whisper about strained relationships and moments where the pressure of fame seemed to weigh heavily on him. While Connery maintained a dignified public image, the man behind the scenes was navigating a complicated balance between his desire for privacy and the demands of the spotlight. One of the most notable moments in Connery's post-Bond career was his return to the franchise for Diamonds Are Forever. But even that was complicated. His comeback didn't receive universal praise, and it seemed to underline how difficult it was to reclaim the magic that had first made him famous. After this, he deliberately distanced himself from Bond, focusing on other projects and even threatening to walk away from Hollywood entirely. Yet, Connery's reinvention wasn't just about acting. He became more vocal about issues important to him, including his Scottish heritage and political views. He sometimes criticized the industry and expressed frustration with the direction his career had taken. This outspokenness added another layer to his public persona. No longer just a cool spy, but a man unafraid to speak his mind. Despite the ups and downs, Connery's post-Bond years showed his determination to define himself on his own terms. He might have started as 007, but he was determined to be so much more. This struggle to reinvent himself wasn't always smooth or pretty, but it made his story all the more human and compelling. The challenges Connery faced after Bond revealed the harsh realities behind fame and how difficult it can be to escape a role that defines you. But even in the toughest moments, there were surprises and controversies that kept his story far from ordinary. What came next only deepened the intrigue around this legendary actor. Sean Connery's life was far from a straightforward fairy tale. Beyond the glitz of Hollywood and the fame of James Bond, his story included moments that stirred controversy and speculation, elements that many fans found surprising or even unsettling. While Connery's public image remained mostly untarnished during his lifetime, whispers and rumors followed him, revealing a more complex picture of the man behind the legend. One of the most persistent themes involved accusations that surfaced at various points. Though it's important to note that these claims were often veiled in ambiguity or settled quietly out of the public eye. In an era when celebrity scandals were rarely discussed openly, Connery's name appeared in stories that hinted at troubled relationships and allegations that never fully materialized in court or public statements. These rumors, while never proven, created a shadow that some say clouded his reputation among insiders. At the same time, Connery was no stranger to outspoken opinions that occasionally sparked backlash. Known for his blunt manner, he sometimes made remarks that offended or alienated certain groups, leading to accusations of being out of step with evolving social attitudes. These moments revealed a man who was unapologetically himself, sometimes to his own detriment, but who didn't always handle public relations with the delicacy expected of modern celebrities. Beyond public controversies, Connery also dealt with personal struggles that were kept private but later surfaced through biographies and insider accounts. There were hints of difficult family relationships, tensions that were never fully explained, and periods of emotional hardship that those close to him described as deeply painful. In some circles, speculation arose about bouts with substance issues or emotional distress, though these were always discussed discreetly, often using euphemisms or indirect language, in keeping with the privacy norms of the time. Importantly, Connery's legacy was also shaped by the evolving perception of his most famous role. As society's views on gender and power dynamics shifted, some critics revisited the Bond films with a more critical eye, pointing out problematic elements like the portrayal of women and the glamorization of violence. Connery himself expressed mixed feelings about this later, acknowledging flaws in the films but still defending the character's impact. What's striking is how Connery managed to navigate these controversies while maintaining a largely positive public profile. Unlike many stars who saw their careers destroyed by scandal, Connery's combination of talent, charm, and careful privacy kept his name respected. But these underlying stories remind us that even the most celebrated figures live with complexities and imperfections that don't always make headlines. Fans who grew up idolizing Connery as the perfect spy were often taken aback when these darker elements emerged. They challenged the image of Connery as the flawless hero and revealed a man who, like anyone else, had shadows lurking beneath the surface. This mix of charisma and controversy, success and struggle, kept Sean Connery's story endlessly fascinating. Proof that behind every legend, there's a human being with a messy, sometimes painful reality. What followed would deepen the conversation around his legacy, blending admiration with critical reflection. Sean Connery's name will forever be etched in the history of cinema, a symbol of charisma, style, and a certain timeless cool that few actors have matched. Yet, his legacy is far more complicated than just being the original James Bond. The story of Connery's life and career reveals a man who was as flawed as he was talented, as private as he was public, and as heroic in his craft as he was human in his struggles. What makes Connery's legacy so fascinating is this duality. On one hand, he created one of the most iconic characters in film history, a role that defined the spy genre and inspired countless imitators. His Bond was a blend of wit, danger, and charm that captured the imagination of millions worldwide. It's a legacy that brought joy, excitement, and escapism to generations. On the other hand, the man behind the character wrestled with issues that remind us how fame can be a double-edged sword. Connery's personal battles, his conflicts with the industry, and the controversies that sometimes followed him complicate the picture of a flawless hero. They make his story more relatable and human, proving that even legends aren't immune to hardship. His efforts to break free from a Bond image showed a desire to be seen as more than just a symbol, to be recognized for his depth and range as an actor. While he didn't always succeed on his own terms, Connery's post-Bond work demonstrated his versatility and resilience. From gritty dramas to sweeping epics, he challenged himself and expanded his craft, leaving behind a rich filmography that goes beyond 007. Perhaps one of the most surprising aspects of Connery's legacy is how his public persona evolved over time. He became more outspoken about his values, his heritage, and his views on the film industry. This honesty sometimes cost him favor in Hollywood, but also added layers to his identity that fans hadn't seen before. In the end, Sean Connery's story isn't just about the man who played James Bond. It's about a life lived in the spotlight, with all its contradictions and complexities. It's about the cost of fame and the struggle for authenticity. It's about the blurred lines between legend and reality. For viewers and fans, this story offers a powerful reminder. The people behind the icons are human, with stories that don't always fit the neat narratives we expect. Connery's life challenges us to look beyond the surface, to appreciate the full picture, the triumphs, the struggles, and everything in between. So next time you watch a Bond film, remember there's more to Sean Connery than the tuxedo and the martini. Behind that cool exterior was a man with a complicated, sometimes messy story, one that's just as captivating as any spy thriller he starred in. Sean Connery's life was a whirlwind of triumphs, struggles, and contradictions, a story that goes far beyond the sleek image of James Bond. While he captivated the world with his unforgettable portrayal of 007, the man behind the iconic role lived a far more complicated and sometimes troubled life. This contrast between legend and reality is what makes Connery's story so compelling. His Bond wasn't just a character. It was a cultural phenomenon that defined an era and reshaped cinema forever. Yet, the very success of that role became a double-edged sword, trapping Connery in a box that he fought hard to escape. His post-Bond career, marked by critical acclaim and personal challenges, shows a man determined to be more than a symbol, a performer hungry to explore new depths. The rumors and controversies that quietly surrounded Connery reveal how little we often see behind celebrity facades. They remind us that fame doesn't erase human complexity. It often magnifies it. Connery's struggles with personal issues, professional conflicts, and public reception are a testament to the hidden battles many endure behind the scenes. What stands out most is Connery's resilience. Despite the pressures, the typecasting, the whispers, he kept pushing forward, evolving not just as an actor, but as a person. His willingness to speak out later in life about issues close to his heart, from his heritage to his opinions on the industry, adds a layer of authenticity that few stars achieve. In reflecting on Connery's story, we're challenged to rethink how we view fame and legend. We learn that icons are not infallible heroes, but complex individuals with flaws and strengths intertwined. This perspective makes Connery's legacy richer, more human, and ultimately more inspiring. So when you think of Sean Connery, don't just remember the suave spy with the sharp wit and unshakable cool. Remember the man who battled shadows behind the spotlight, who strived for something beyond the fame, and who left behind a story as gripping and unpredictable as any thriller he starred in. His life invites us to look deeper, to appreciate not just a myth, but the messy, fascinating reality beneath. And in that truth, Sean Connery's real story shines brighter than any role he ever played. Sean Connery's story reminds us that behind every legend is a real person with a complex life. From the iconic role of James Bond to the struggles he faced off-screen, his journey was anything but simple. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the lives behind the legends. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.